And something else that I think, and you brought this up earlier in this episode, is learning to celebrate what our friends share on social media without allowing that to bring us to a place of discontentment.
So important.
I mean,
And again, I know I'm an outlier, but I love to see my friends and my acquaintances and others succeed. I think that's wonderful.
and I don't know that you're necessarily an outlier. It's just one of those we all fall into, oh, I visited so and so and they've got a nice house. I wish.
You may be one choice away from a thriving marriage. Welcome to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast with Brian and Jennifer Harvey.
Well, welcome back to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast. I'm Jennifer Harvey, and my husband Brian Harvey is here with me in the studio.
Hey, everybody.
Todd's at the board as our fantastic producer, and we're delighted to be talking about this episode today that we've entitled Flashy Friends.
Friends are important for marriage. I mean, sometimes we've talked about couples and they've had this attitude of, hey, we're best friends, which we are. I mean, you're my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the only relationship, and it's never been God's intent to, okay, it's just you two and that's it, you're good to go. God's always intended for there to be community. And you talk a lot about your friends. What is it about your friends? How does that impact our marriage, do you think?
Well, I always like to brag about my friends because they're just so supportive and amazing. They're, women that I look to and appreciate just seeing them in their lives, their careers, their relationships, and the choices that they've made. And I think that friends are important in their influence on a marriage because many of the listeners know that you and I met when I was 17, just out of high school. You were just a year out of college at 18. And many of our friends have seen us together as a couple for a long time when we were dating, then getting married. And they've always been very supportive of us as a couple. They like you, they like me. There you go.
Me.
They like you very much, Sally Fields. And I think it's just a really great kind of thing, and just that impact that they're going to have of being encouraging to us in our marriage, acknowledging us as a couple. They want us to do well. They want our kids to do well. They want us to do well individually as well as a family. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, friends have a huge impact. Can be positive, can be negative. Jimmy Evans from XO Marriage, he often talks about how our friends reveal our future. It's one of those, what are we becoming? Obviously, as a couple, what we're becoming, we influence each other into what we're becoming, but the friends relationships too. And that can be for good or for ill. And it's important to think through some of the friends I have through the military. There are some friends that they are very encouraging and supportive of marriage. And those are the ones that I want to be closer to. And I have other friends that are good people, but they've had hurts and different things. And so they're not as positively predisposed to marriage because of some things that happened in their lives. Certainly not the people who, even though they love you, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to them for what does it mean to be a good husband.
Absolutely.
Because they haven't had that experience. And so when I need encouragement or when I need someone to thump me on the head and say, Brian, what the heck are you doing there? It's the people that are positively predisposed to marriage and the people that are working on their own marriages. And I've got one of my friends who I don't see him as often anymore since I'm up at headquarters, but regularly, he's talking to me, he's like, hey, the stuff you're putting on the website and on Facebook, he's constantly, hey, he doesn't comment a lot on social media, but he sees the posts we put on the Operation Thriving Marriage Facebook page, and he's constantly saying, hey, those things are always good reminders, and thank you for that. And so us being able to talk about marriage, he clearly cares about marriage and is using what he's seeing from these things to support his marriage, and he's talked about that impact. And so we're able to have that relationship. But the Bible is full of examples and exhortations about the importance of healthy friendships.
Mm-hmm.
God designed us for that. So we want to have those healthy, strong friendships. But the difficult thing is sometimes people who we consider friends, and they're great phenomenal people, for the most part, they can still have a negative impact on our marriage.
Oh, and that's a very good possibility because, we had come across a situation, not to us personally, so being clear about that, but we've seen that incident happen very recently in the area of finances. And what's interesting is, of course, in our culture right now, it's internet, it's social media. Friends are constantly bragging about their latest vacation or their expensive meal or expensive purchases, vehicles, homes, and latest technology, just things like that. And my position is there's nothing objectively wrong with people celebrating positive things on life and social media, because I love it when people are just like, gosh, I was able to save up for this, or I'm doing better in my career, have advanced, so I'm able to afford things that I wanted to do. I think probably my favorites are just kind of seeing the achievements when people are just like, I just got a degree, I love that,
Yeah.
or my kid just graduated, just different things like that. That's phenomenal. But I think seeing through influencers, through people who who you're friends with on Facebook, whether you're close to them or not, that constant flood of flashy purchases has been shown time and time again to lead people to feel depressed, to feel left out, to feel, not included or not able to do the cool stuff.
Yeah, it's so many times you see this stuff and envy crops in. It's like, why is my life not as good as Fred and Sally's life? I don't know why it's always Sally. I mean, there's got to be other women with other names out there, but for some reason I only think of Sally when I'm coming up with random women's names.
And that's just a name. We're not thinking of a particular Sally, but if you're doing great, Sally, good on you.
We love you, Sally.
That's right.
We see, people see that and it's like, why is my life not that? And it's been clinically shown to increase anxiety and depression. So first thing is just be responsible with your use of social media.
Absolutely. And I think, understand it for what it is. I'm kind of an outlier in this, where when I see people doing great on social media, I don't feel bad. I feel really good for them, and I want positive things for them. And it's like, okay, good on you. That's fantastic. But I know that more people than not, like you're saying, it's leaving them feeling less than or depressed. And I don't want that for any of our listeners or anybody else. So just be responsible, as Brian's saying, about that kind of use of social media and the perspective, because obviously people are normally posting highlight reels of what's going on in their lives. They're not posting an argument that they had or a problem they had at work or a problem with a child or a friend. It's the highlight reels.
It's always interesting when you look at someone's Facebook page or Instagram or whatever, and you see a picture of a couple and they are in Hawaii or they're celebrating something fantastic, and then that's the last picture you ever see of them together.
Sure.
And I've seen that a couple of times where I've had friends, not close friends, so acquaintance is probably a better description, where I'll notice, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so's spouse recently in their pictures. And so I'm like, I hope they're okay. And my first thought is someone sick?
Sure.
It's like that. So I go check to see if I missed something important, and it's just there's this stopping point. And it's like, ooh, there's something happened in the relationship. And then, you got to be delicate talking to people depending on how close you are. But you find out that the relationship ended, the marriage ended, and you didn't know about it because...
Or maybe you don't even hear that part. You just hear, oh, this person just got married. And it's like, what?
Yeah, there's the positive things too.
I'm saying it's like, and there's like a second spouse now, but it's like they're
okay, yeah.
There's no report of the divorce, right? And then all of a sudden, oh, they're married to somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, I see
Moving
someone...
on.
And that's a good point. I saw someone who I went to school with someone, and I was Facebook friends with them and their spouse, and I didn't know their spouse well. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing pictures of their spouse with another guy. I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, another struggle we see couples face is couples. Okay, let me try to say this clearly here. The friends of the couple pushing them to spend money the way the friends do.
Yes, and that's a mouthful, but yes, friends can pressure couples to go out on expensive dinner double dates or go with them to expensive activities, like theatrical productions or concerts. We just came from New York City and Broadway. It's worthwhile, enjoy, but that can get really expensive.
Yeah.
Concerts can get very expensive, or even very expensive vacations, and some of it seems to be just for the photo moments. But I think, in fairness, sometimes these friends are simply being inclusive. They want to share experiences. They want to go on trips together. Of course, we have friends where, families will go on trips together and they have a great time doing that. But when you're dealing with some of these things as to finances, especially if this is something getting more expensive, the friends don't understand that perhaps a couple can't spend the same way because of income, different financial responsibilities or obligation, or just choosing not to do because of different values regarding how they want to spend and use funds.
And sometimes these friends can even get pushy, and we've heard couples talk about that, and we've even read articles about things of being called cheap. It's like, oh, they're planning to go out to whatever restaurants. Like, hey, can we go to this? Let's go. Let's be
Fast casual.
let's go to Applebee's and get the Bourbon Street steak instead of whatever. And it's like, well, why are you being so cheap? Or they'll, instead of just splitting the bill, they'll want separate checks because they got chicken and water instead of lobster and wine for dinner. It's like, well, I don't want to pay for your lobster when all I got was chicken. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, we thought this was just, hey, we were just going to split the check and not separate checks and things like that. And there's a lot of pressure that will be put on couples, and that creates stress in the marriage, particularly if one spouse is closer to the friends than the other spouse.
Sure.
And they feel a need to fit in with that group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always true. I mean, there's differences, you and I, when I'm hanging out with lawyers, I know how to hang out with lawyers, but I'm not going to be as comfortable with lawyers as I am hanging out with my military friends, and vice versa. You get along great with when we get together with the family events and go to the military ball and stuff like that. You do very well with that, but you're more comfortable in other settings because those are more your people rather than mine. And so this can create stress in the marriage as certain friends are pushing things to do that. And then you start to feel like you don't fit in. And whether it's lifestyle stuff because we're hanging out together in this, or we're seeing things on social media, or people are trying to say, hey, come on, let's just do one more drink, or hey, let's go out to this one. I know we were out last week for a concert, but let's go see this other concert because this group is just whatever. You start feeling left out, and you don't want to miss out on those relationships, but you can't necessarily afford it, or you're choosing not to because of other goals that you have.
And the first and most important thing to remember is the financial decisions that you're making as a couple, they're yours and yours alone.
Absolutely.
It's not anybody else's. And, I think that friends need to be understanding of this. It's not, giving somebody a hard time. Oh, come on, let's do this, let's do that. It's like, well, no, you've got an individual who is married and they're together making these decisions, and this other couple can go off and do what they choose with their own funds, just like that other couple can as well. And maybe you're not hanging out with that couple for these activities all the time, or you're participating upon occasion, but you've got to make these decisions. Yours is yours alone, because you are ultimately answering to God regarding your financial decisions.
And that's the most important.
Oh,
what your
sure.
friends think about how you spend your money, when it comes down to it, we love our friends. Friends are fantastic people. But when it comes down to it, their opinion of how you spend your money is irrelevant.
Sure.
You as a couple and what you're doing to honor God, that's what's important.
Oh, that's absolutely what the decision should be made upon. And I think that as a couple, you have to make lifestyle and purchasing decisions together. And again, you're looking at those values. What are your future goals that you have? What's the example that you want to set for your kids and the others around you in your community? These are just a lot of things to keep in mind here. And another thing that we need to learn to do is to be content with the situation that God has placed us in.
And it's okay, though, And this is something we've talked about a lot. It's okay to have and pursue financial goals. When we say being content in the situation God has placed you in, that doesn't mean you can't work to move in a more positive situation financially. That doesn't mean be content in a bad job when you have the opportunity to make more money in a new job, as long as those goals are aligned with Scripture. God doesn't say you have to be stuck and not change, because change is always happening. It's changing in a way that is making you more godly. And financial goals, including possibly making more money or investing. One of the things we talk about a lot is one of the best gifts you will ever give to your children is making sure they don't have to worry about you in your old age. So investing in retirement and having those financial goals so that while they're raising their children, they're not trying to raise money to support you. That's a great goal to have that is scripturally aligned. And having those goals is a good thing. You don't need to just be stuck, but you need to be content with what God is allowing you to have in that moment.
And if I may address a bit of a misnomer, I mean, of course, not every church is like this, but we have seen pastors over the years where they just say, tithe to the church the 10% or start at 10% and give more, and whatever else you do with the rest of your money, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
100%.
And just the reality is how you're managing all of your funds is relevant to you and to your relationship with God. So keep that in mind. And you might be thinking now, well, goodness, I've got to start praying through more and planning more and being more purposeful with what I'm doing with this other 90% or 80 some percent or whatever it is. So just be wise about that as well, about how you're doing this.
It's all God's money. But whatever it is, you need to learn to be content. And this is something that is challenging to me, this passage from Paul in Philippians, because I'm just not good at it. And in Philippians 4:11-12, Paul says, I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content in any circumstance. I've experienced times of need and times of abundance. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of contentment. Whether I go satisfied or hungry, have plenty or nothing, I wish I was like Paul and I had that secret of contentment. And he goes on to say later in that passage that he can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's that focus on Jesus. But I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to try to blow smoke to our audience. That's hard for me. Sometimes I like having nice things. I like my motorcycle. I like going on cruises. I like doing those things. And I need to remember to be content in where God has placed us. And sometimes we have these conversations a lot about, okay, how do we direct our funds to be godly in our whole thing and not just be hedonistic with the 90%, like you were just saying?
Sure. And I don't think we are hedonistic with the 90%. I think you guys would be seeing a lot more entertaining and amazing Facebook posts if we were, or other social media posts. But I think the other thing too is sometimes for me, I feel like I'm kind of scrambling with work and managing finances because I'm trying to keep up with what I think my family wants, and I need to, just do some reevaluations there.
Yeah, and we need to do that, and that's a conversation we have with each other and with the kids. Just like, okay, we need to teach each other to be content, and we need to teach our children to be content. We need to be content. That's going to deal with a lot of the pressure and stress in marriage. And something else that I think, and you brought this up earlier in this episode, is learning to celebrate what our friends share on social media without allowing that to bring us to a place of discontentment.
So important. And I again, I know I'm an outlier, but I love to see my friends and my acquaintances and others succeed. I think that's wonderful.
And I don't know that you're necessarily an outlier. It's just one of those we all fall into. There are times when, oh, I visited so-and-so and they've got a nice house and I wish should we have more of a house? Are we doing as well as we should be at this or that? But then we all also see things like, oh, we want to celebrate with that. Focusing more, though, on the celebration and less on the I wish or should I have. am I doing as well as I should be based on where I am in my career? It's like, no,
Whatever that means, right?
Celebrate with those who are celebrating. Again, mourn with those who mourn, celebrate with those who celebrate. Do that and see that and just kind of, okay, hit the like button and give a little comment, hey, so happy for you, without letting that bring you to a place of discontentment. And take a moment then also, it's like, okay, be grateful to God for what the other people are experiencing. Focus on gratitude and focus on God and less on what you don't have.
And sometimes, too, we need to make hard decisions about the people that we allow to influence us. Remember, your friends do show you what your future is going to be. And I think that friends that are trying to be inclusive, who are then naively pushing you to spend beyond your comfort level, are going to listen to you, hopefully, if they're good friends, right? And you need to explain to them that you're managing your finances in a way that prevents you from spending that way, and they'll listen and respond. You'll be able to work things out together. This has nothing to do with like flashy stuff, but what I thought was interesting is we were approached by a couple who we're friends with, and they were going to be going to Alaska on a missionary project, and they were just like, hey, we hate sending out these letters, but can you send us some support on that? And it's like, you know what? We're committed to some giving for our church, just doing some new building stuff and whatnot. So it's not like we've got a lot of extra to throw around. But yes, we're going to support you.
But let me jump in on that too, because we chose in that moment. But you don't have to say yes to all of the good opportunities.
Sure.
And most of the time, we choose at the beginning of the year what we're going to give. Mm-hmm. And we have specific charities and specific causes that we are committed to. And so we do tell people sometimes, your cause is important, but we've already committed our charitable giving, and you need to listen to the Holy Spirit, and you shouldn't be hidebound in that and say, we won't give anything beyond what we've committed to. If God blesses us with more, then we should be willing to give more. But I think that's important, too, to pre-decide those things, because you don't have to be beholden to every time someone comes to you with a good cause that you need to support it.
That's very, very true. And frankly, it's harder for me to say no to that when asked, perhaps, than to you. But, you have to kind of navigate these things with your values versus just kind of that, gut or, geez, I really don't want to say no to this.
Right, absolutely. But then also, some friends, they're just naive. They're just trying to be inclusive, and you should be able to work that out. But there are people who just don't respect your financial boundaries, and those people are not the future you want.
Isn't that the truth?
So as a couple, you need to decide what level of continued relationship you want with them. If you're experiencing pressure from friends to spend money that you don't have, that's not okay. It's okay to choose not to be friends with people who are taking you to a place that is not a godly place.
And the truth of the matter is, as Christians, we're supposed to be very different than what the rest of the world is. With, of course, we live in our culture. We have similar things happening that, affect us in the culture, where we're going to have some things that are similar. But as Christians, we are going to stand out. We may be thought of like as the gonzo who's kind of weird, but still part of the Muppets, but still very different.
But stand out for the right reasons too, right?
Sure.
It's not about...
It's Gonzo's nose.
Yeah, it's not about logos on clothes or the music you buy or what you've got on your playlist or whatever it is. Nothing wrong with that per se, but what we should be standing out is not the external stuff, but it's godly living.
Absolutely. And our financial decisions shouldn't look like the culture that's around us or what we're seeing on social media and posted to the gram. People need to see how we spend money and understand that there's something that is just different about us and our lifestyles. We don't hoard money because we think it's our ultimate security, but we also don't waste it by just buying the latest expensive toy or chasing the next cool experience. We use finances as a tool to glorify God and live in a way that reveals his loving kingdom to the world around us.
Thank you so much for listening to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast, and we are booking live events into the next ministry season. So if you'd like to have us come out to your church and share with you guys, we'd love to that. Share this podcast with your pastor and the leadership at your church and share with them that we are available and love to hear from you more.
Jen and I started Operation Thriving Marriage to help couples and churches take marriages from merely surviving to thriving. We've got our book, we've got a blog and resources for our coaching ministry, and you can bring us out for an Operation Thriving Marriage experience. For more information, go to operationthrivingmarriage.com. That's operationthrivingmarriage.com.